We're on a mission from God.
And now for something completely different.
Let's get ready to rumble! Yeah, baby, yeah!
This is Pastor Jolly John Lekumsky coming to you from the beautiful weather of Northfield, Minnesota. We've been in the 70s, Matt. Man, has it been a nice summer up here. So how about you, Matt?
Thanks for asking, John. And thanks for rubbing it in because, as you well know, I am in steamy St. Louis, Missouri. Hot and humid, John. Miserable. Where I serve as pastor at Ascension Lutheran. So, it's a little toasty here in St. Louis. I'm not going to lie.
But at least you have Ted Drew's ice cream, Matt.
Yes. That's my one consolation.
So I've got a bug, something to pick with you. What is it that people pick?
A bone.
A bone. I'm sorry, it's not a bug. I've got a bug to a bone to pick with you. You said to me, John, let's do the Psalms for the summer. And I'm thinking, what a great choice, because after all, we want to relax. We want to take it easy in the summer. I'm thinking, well, we can do the Lord is my shepherd. Sure, there should be. And then it seems to me you picked out the hardest Psalms that are in the Bible. In fact, you make me wonder who was editing this book. It seemed like some things got through there they should have not got through. Well,
150 was a nice round number for the book of Psalms, so they wanted to get up to 150.
Well, I was wondering too, because we've done 1 and 2, and I'm thinking, the Hebrews do things backwards. Maybe those were supposed to be at the end, not at the beginning. Maybe we're supposed to read those last.
Yeah, because
do you start at 150 and work backwards?
Yeah, 150 is a pretty light psalm in terms of deep theology, I guess. The very last psalm of the Psalter is just a psalm of praise, simple psalm of praise. Maybe we should have started there.
Well, see, I'm thinking, like I said, the Hebrews go from right to left, and if you have the Hebrew Bible at home, it confuses the heck out of you because it starts in the back of the book, not in the front.
Yep.
And so I'm thinking, so maybe Psalm 1 and 2 were just these couple of psalms, and they said, oh well, we got to throw them in. Like you say, we got to have 150 of them. They're not the best psalms, but whatever. So Psalm number 1 sounds like it's written by some Pharisee who's boasting about the fact that, he never has anything to do with sinners, which of course hurts my feelings right away because I'm a sinner. I'm thinking, well, I guess I'll never get it
personally.
Yeah, I'll never get invited over to your house. But then, I was comforted by the fact that, Jesus eats and drinks with sinners. I think it's okay. I guess I'm all right then.
Yeah.
And I thought we did a pretty good job of dealing with that rather difficult psalm. And if anyone's interested, I invite you to go back and listen to July 8th and July 15th, what we did with Psalm 1. And then you brought up Psalm 2, and you said, what kind of psalm is Psalm 2, man?
A messianic psalm, a psalm of the Messiah.
I think, okay, now we got it made. Right? Because it's about Jesus, right? If it's messianic, it's about Jesus. I love Jesus, he's the best guy I know around. And before we get into the thing that troubles me, though, you did say there was one more interesting, clear thing you wanted to say about Psalm 2. So I'll let you do that, and then I'll present my problem. Okay.
Okay. And this is wrestling with the basics, by the way.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing this summer. We're wrestling with these psalms.
But it's sweaty enough. We're sweaty enough at summertime. We don't need to be more sweaty. We don't need more exercise. Okay, all right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We could change the name of the show for the summer, John. Relaxing poolside with the basics. Okay. Yeah, Psalm 2. So just a real quick review. Messianic psalm, like we just mentioned. So Psalm of the Messiah. A Messiah, that word that is a title. It means anointed one. That's the Hebrew Aramaic word. Also, the Greek word is Christ, another word that we're familiar with, but sometimes I think we forget that's a title as well. It means anointed one. What is an anointed one? Well, an anointed one is someone who is set apart for a special job. Literally, there's oil poured on them, and that shows visibly to them, to others, that they're set apart for a special job. And we talked about a little bit last time about King Charles' coronation in England not that long ago, and how he was anointed with oil, and that was part of that ceremony, that coronation, where he was hidden away, right?
But for some reason, they hid it.
Yeah.
They covered him up when they were doing that, which makes no sense to me at all, except I guess just for privacy reasons.
Yeah, just privacy.
Propriety. Propriety. You don't want to see a naked king. No one wants to see that.
I don't know if he was naked, but there was at least oil on him. So anyway, so it's a special part of the ceremony for whatever reason they hide it away, even today. But when we talk about Messiah, I think sometimes we jump right away to Jesus, right? And it is about Jesus, but also in Psalm 2 and these other messianic psalms, it's talking about David as well. So Psalm 2, for instance, likely written for his coronation as king. And so the Messiah, maybe Messiah with a little m, is first David. He's the anointed one. Yeah, he's the king here in this case. But it also points us ahead to the Messiah with a big M. The Messiah of Messiahs. It points us ahead to Jesus, the one who's anointed as king, but also as we learn in the Small Catechism, prophet and priest as well. Prophet, priest, and king. What I wanted to wrap up with, John, is just simply this image, and I mentioned it briefly last time, of that object that's given to a king when they are coronated in the United Kingdom and in other places. They're given that globe with
it's an orb, isn't it? Is it an orb?
An orb, a sphere, an orb.
Okay.
The official name, that is the Latin name is globus cruciger.
Oh, cool.
So it means cross-bearing orb is what it means in English. The globus cruciger. So you can Google that and get a picture of it, and it's Monty Python, I think they call it the holy hand grenade, and
that's right. It is.
It does represent a hand grenade, perhaps, if you use your imagination. But the more pious way of looking at this object is that it's supposed to signify the world, the globe, but then the cross on top, and this same idea that Psalm 2 gets at, especially in those opening verses about how the nations raging, right, and the kings of the earth setting themselves and taking counsel together and saying, "Let us burst their bonds apart." And the one who sits in heaven laughs. The Lord holds them in derision. When the nations and kings of the world rebel against God, he just sort of laughs, right? So this object, this orb, cross on top, reminds us Jesus, ultimately, the Messiah, is above all, above the world. So what I talked about, I mentioned that last time, but then what I wanted to also mention was there's this really neat painting, I think it's neat, by Albrecht Dürer. So this Reformation era artist, and it's a depiction of someone holding a globus cruciger, this orb and cross. But what's kind of interesting, he doesn't finish the painting.
Oh, really?
It's incomplete. So he leaves Germany and he departs for Italy, and he just doesn't ever finish it. So if you look this up and Albrecht Dürer, globus cruciger is probably enough to Google to find it. It's this unfinished work. Like the person's face is just kind of sketched in haphazardly. He's wearing a robe, and you just kind of make out this image of holding this globus cruciger, this orb with a cross on top. But the figure in the painting is supposed to be Jesus. It's supposed to be Christ, the Messiah.
Really? That is neat.
So he's holding this globus cruciger, this orb, in his nail-pierced but resurrected hands, and I think it's just a beautiful image. And what I love most about it is the fact that it is unfinished, John. I think that's really neat. And it's a reminder to us that, Jesus' work of salvation is, incomplete too, to a certain extent. We know that the cross, yep, he died on the cross, and it is finished. Jesus rose from the dead. He came back to life. Yeah, he wins our salvation, no doubt about it. But as we confess in the Apostles' Creed, we're still waiting, right, for the resurrection of the body and the life everlasting. We're still waiting for Christ's return when things will finally be complete. And so just like in that painting, that it's incomplete and you don't see that figure fully reigning, so also we're not going to see Jesus fully reigning over this world and over all things until his return. And then all will see that. Finally, the picture will be complete. We'll see that, Jesus is the Messiah. He is the Christ. He is the anointed one. And every knee will bow and every tongue confess exactly that Jesus is the Christ, that he is Lord. So really, I think that's kind of a neat image to keep in our minds.
And it ties in with Psalm 1, because Psalm 1 had the same kind of ending where things are not quite finished yet. We're still waiting for the final judgment where the righteous will finally be seen for what they are. And you know what? I think it also, what you just said, will help answer my question. Okay?
Okay, good.
Because, see, my concern is you said we're going to do a messianic psalm. It's going to be about Jesus. And no doubt this psalm is about Jesus. In fact, the New Testament quotes several verses out of this psalm. The one about, you are my son, today I've begotten you. That's quoted several times. Of course, this whole business about the nation's rage. That's quoted by the apostles in the book of Acts. But so I'm thinking, in Messianic Psalms, so we're going to get this beautiful picture of Jesus, the good shepherd who loves and forgives. And yet it closes with these words, kiss the Son, lest he be angry and you perish in the way, for his wrath is quickly kindled. And I think, what? That doesn't sound like my Jesus. Yeah. I don't ever think about worrying about that he's going to destroy me. I'm going to perish. So do you have an explanation for that, Matt?
Well, I would. Thanks, John. I would just say that is a facet of who Jesus is. I wouldn't say, this is entirely who Christ is, right? That he is, he's out to make people perish, right?
Yeah.
And, he's not one that's, his wrath is always quickly kindled all the time. But, when it talked about kiss the Son, lest he become angry, the translator here, at least in the English Standard Version, chose to capitalize S, right? Mm-hmm. So it really is, like you said, pointing us, it's probably talking about Jesus. Ultimately it is talking about him as the Messiah. And again, as Messiah, as King, to kiss the king, well, that was a sign of, even still today, right? It's a sign of reverence.
Sure.
You kiss their ring or whatever, and it's a sign of reverence and submission to that king. They're the ones in charge. They're king. I'm not. And I'm showing my loyalty, my submission, my devotion to that king. So I think there's it's a word of law here, really, for us, to kiss the Son, lest he become angry. That we would show Christ reverence and respect and honor and submit to him in our lives. That we would come to in repentance even and come before him in humility. So, and if we don't do that, well, there is a word of warning, right? If we refuse to do that, if in our pride we refuse to submit to Christ, if we think we are self-sufficient on our own, if we think we're the king and the one in charge and he's not, well, there's going to be consequences. I think it's a first commandment issue, right? If we're not loving and fearing God above all things, and submitting to him, we're in trouble, because if we're not submitting to Christ, if he's not the one in charge, if he's not king, well, then who is? And sometimes we set ourselves up as king, and it only leads to trouble.
So I had two thoughts about that. On one hand, this text actually isn't talking to us at all. It's addressing the kings, it's addressing the rulers, it's addressing the people who are in control, the people who have power, which unfortunately you and I don't. Okay, man, would it not be a better world if you and I were actually president? But we're not. So there you go.
Are you announcing something, John?
No.
Or is this the beginning of? Are you going to be on the debate stage?
Well, I don't know.
Throwing
If
your
we-
head in the ring?
If we don't get any better candidates, I might just have to.
You've got my vote.
Although I really appreciate what you're saying. In the long run, of course, it applies to everybody. Because like you said, everybody wants to be in control of their own lives. If not the government, if not a country. Yeah, we want to be boss in charge. And of course, as we all well know, that doesn't work out very well. And in that sense, we have experienced the wrath that's quickly kindled because we've done things that we did on our own, what we thought was right, and we soon found out, no, that probably isn't. Trust me, I can tell you stories about that. But I did think it was interesting that I think one of the great things I'm learning is that the New Testament actually helps us understand what the Psalms are. As we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the Psalms are written by people who live in darkness. And the New Testament people have a way of coming back and saying, okay, here's what this is really all about. And of course, that's what the apostles do. They quote this business about the nations raging in reference to the fact that they've been told not to preach Jesus Christ, right? That they were brought in, they were arrested, and they said, okay, well, it doesn't do any good to jail these people. We'll release them, but here we're telling you, don't you dare talk about Jesus Christ anymore. And of course, Peter says, well, you can tell us whatever you want to, but we got to do what God tells us to do. And then they come back and they quote this passage to all the rest of the Christians. So you see, this is being fulfilled now. The leaders are actually trying to stop us from preaching Jesus, but it won't stop. It won't stop. The gospel will be proclaimed no matter how the nations rage, as it says. And the reason I want to emphasize that is, and it goes back to what you said. See, England misunderstood the globus cruciger. Is that how it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they thought, we are the power. Mm-hmm. We are the power of Jesus Christ. And therefore they would go and they would fight wars and they would try to conquer people. And they said, well, of course we can do this because the king is divinely appointed. And they missed the point. Christianity is not spread by the sword. It just doesn't happen that way. No one has ever become a Christian because a Christian nation has come in and conquered them. If anything, that kind of activity has alienated and driven people away from the church. Luther has this beautiful quote about how to overcome the Turks. And he says, ultimately, the only way you'll overcome the Turks is by making more Christians in those countries. Mm-hmm. That's the only way you're going to get it done. And so I thought, we need to remember that when we hear this song, we maybe think, well, that's right. We got to start taking care of all these Gentiles and these other nations that don't believe in Jesus. And we have to remember what the apostles understood. No, there's only one thing we have to do, and that is we have to preach the gospel. And that gospel will end up being preached to all nations. And then these people will be believers, and then they will kiss the Son, not because they're afraid of him or afraid of the armies that are commanded by him, but because they understand the last verse of that text, which is, blessed are all who take refuge in him. See, I thought that's so cool that psalm, after giving us this picture of a God of wrath and anger, righteously so, because if you oppose the love of God, if you oppose the proclamation of his Son who came to suffer and die for people's sins, of course that's going to make him mad. Wouldn't it make you mad if someone suggested to your son Noah that you didn't love him? Wouldn't that get you really, really upset?
Yeah,
because you
course.
love Noah. He's important to you. And God help anybody who tries to say that you don't love him and you don't care for him. And that's the context here. That's what makes the Son angry, is that people would suggest that he's not someone we can come and take refuge in him. Blessed are all who take refuge in him. So see, the more you study the Psalms, you're going to realize, wow, there's all kinds of really good stuff here. And again, I think in this psalm, we're just reminded that the only way we're going to spread Christianity is just by preaching Jesus Christ. And people will oppose that. And we just need to expect that. Let's not be frustrated or surprised at that. We just do like the disciples. We just go out and start preaching Jesus again. The danger is, though, we begin to think then we have to back it up with power and that we have to have wars and might. And then people, no, No, there's only one way people will be converted, and that is simply through doing what you and I are doing, strangely enough. And what you and I are doing, actually going out to all of these other nations. Who knows who might be listening to what's scary when I think about it that way. But there might be people in Muslim countries that are listening to this. So let's let them know we don't hate Muslims. No, we don't hate Arabs. We believe in a God who loves and forgives everyone. And that's all he wants to do. And how could you reject that? How could you reject a religion that simply says we have a God of love, a God who loves us enough that he would die for us? How could anyone reject that? But of course, people do. And as you said, for the very reason, because that also means that we just have to take refuge in him. We no longer have the right to call things and decide things for our own, but we have to just trust in him. All right, Matt. Anyway, that's the thoughts I had. We were supposed to get to Psalm 3. I don't know. Any more do you want about Psalm 2? Or
just to affirm what you said, John. I think that's what Jesus would say, right? Those who live by the sword, die by the sword.
Yeah.
This idea. No. As he speaks to Peter in the night of his arrest and says, "No, put your sword back in its scabbard," right? And even Jesus himself. I think as we look at this messianic psalm, what type of Messiah, what type of King, anointed one, did people expect Jesus to be? And even his own disciples expected him to be one that, would rule with the sword and use that sword especially against the Romans, right? And kick them out. But no, that's not why Jesus came. Instead, he came to heal the sick and proclaim the kingdom of heaven. The reign of God is at hand, to show who he is, not only to the Jews, but also to Gentiles too, which is good news for us because that's who we are, John. We're a couple of Gentiles. We're not Jewish insiders. We're a couple of Gentiles. That Jesus came for us too, and again, not with sword, but with the word and with with the proclamation. The kingdom is at hand. A kingdom that is shared by restoring what is wrong, and making right what's wrong because of sin.
And Matt, I really appreciate what you said earlier in this episode about the fact that it is talking about us too. Because I always hate it when I start talking about other people and the things they're doing wrong. Because obviously the law that Jesus gives is meant to not be applied at the other guy whose sins are so obvious, but also to me whose sins are really more obvious. I don't see them. That's a log in my eye, but I can see the speck in the other guy's eye. And I think it is important to realize, we probably have done these things too. We have probably alienated people as well. We don't want to. You and I have devoted our lives as pastors. We want to make Jesus as welcoming as possible. But no doubt, maybe even within our families and our friends, we've done things that have offended them, hurt their feelings, whatever, angered them, things that we did out of our own selfishness and pride. So this is a real problem for all of us. But it's as you said earlier, Matt, the thing is we repent of that. I do go and I kiss the Son, and I kiss him in terms of saying, man, Lord, thank you for being my refuge, because I know I've done a lot of things that probably have disturbed you. I haven't loved my brother as I should. And yet, having said that, I do think, I thank the apostles that they came and said, let me tell you what Psalm 2 is all about. It's not about going to war, right? That's not what, you're not supposed to be angry. You're not supposed to be the one whose wrath is quickly kindled. You're not supposed to go out with a rod of iron and dash them into pieces like a potter's vessel. That's not an assignment for you. But no, our job is to simply preach about Jesus Christ, who is a refuge for all people. Matt, we got about a half a minute. Anything you want to wrap up? You want to talk about what's coming up next week, or anything more about this psalm?
Yeah, next week join us because we're going to talk about a psalm of lament. Okay, that's the next genre, the next type of psalm.
What you got to be another one of these things like vanity of vanities? All is vanity. You're just making it hard.
You have to tune in next week and find out, John.
Okay.
But so join us next week, and we hope you do, here on Wrestling with the Basics.